Alright guys, TacticalRab back again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. With Atlanta FaZe now 0-4 up against OpTic Texas so far this year. What is it going to take for this team to get over that mental block? And is it even possible? With Cellium seemingly the only player that actually enjoys this game at all, is their team completely chalked in terms of winning events for the rest of this year? Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I'll greatly appreciate it. Really up to the channel. Thank you very much indeed for doing that one. Plenty to dive into today. Crim and the boys of course get over the line. There was this of course we talked about yesterday morning about the fact that, okay, does this event actually count? Some further on discussion here from Octane as he says, why is everyone so concerned with events counting? I swear I've seen a million things about it over the weekend. Cash is cash, who cares if it counts? That's the thing, I think in general the pros don't really mind. Like, I think their perspective in general is kind of like, okay, look, every event counts to a certain degree, some events count more than others, and yeah, I mean, cash is cash, as Octane says. This is what Joey Nubsy thinks, I thought was quite an interesting take. If it's a tournament that every CDL team is in, or a select amount qualified through performance, right, or qualified for through performance. Of course, the Modern Warfare home series was just randomly selected effectively. There was no kind of performance metric as to who got invited to those 8-team tournaments, and it isn't a pre-season, right, because the kickoff this year was arguably rather questionable. Controller just come out right at the start of the season. Then if those things aren't the case, then it counts as a championship. We'll get into online versus LAN though, don't care enough. This also, as Kismet says, of course, who won the event. I get the argument that there isn't a losers bracket, but at the end of the day, it's 250k, all 12 teams, plus the 4 best challenges teams, all attended. Almost feel like if anyone else won, no one would care or argue about it. That's the thing. People have been saying, look, because Crim won, people don't want to count it effectively. And as Octane says, I don't know why people care about so much if it does or not. Fairly confident the players don't care about it. And as Clay says, we've had players at ESWCs and invitationals to the count. It legit doesn't matter if it counts or not. They all count as Clay's perspective. That's the thing. If you're going to count some of these ones back in the day, this one, for sure has to count towards the metrics. Even this, as Jacob says, this counts for sure, but Crim's winning that Black Ops 3 tourney in Australia doesn't count, and I won't rest until it's taken off his total. So we mentioned this briefly yesterday. The Crown Melbourne Invitational is what it was called, and OpTic Gaming, basically the winners of all the different regions, flew out to Australia. OpTic Gaming, of course, won North American Stage 1 playoffs back in Black Ops 3. So therefore, in a way, they did qualify for this tournament, if you know what I mean. If Rise had won that kind of Game 7, if you guys remember watching that back in the good old days, then Rise would have been the team invited out to this tournament, and they'd have got to play and got this, arguably free W, even though Millennium pretty good squad as well. But OpTic came out here, they beat Tainted Minds, because they got to bye, I guess, through the first round. They beat Tainted Minds, they then beat Millennium, the European best team in the grand finals, to win the entire thing. So in effect, it was kind of like the best teams from all the regions, but arguably there was barely any actual good teams here. It was just Australian teams effectively, plus Millennium. So yeah, the 6-team invitational single in with OpTic first round bye victory. Right? What a tournament this was, but arguably they did qualified, right? Kind of interesting as Jacob says, counts for scum, but not for Crim's sake, just obviously tongue-in-cheek for joking around right there. But I thought it was pretty interesting regardless. This also we did touch on yesterday, just kind of confirmation really here from Zero, as Chrome points out. That was a pretty disgusting kill right there, that yes, indeed, Zero will be switching to this SMG role. Nasty will now play the flex. So that's the thing. Will Ravens, they have a fair few points. I'm pretty sure they're still like third in CDL totals, just about. But yeah, if they start falling off dramatically, their champ spot is not too much in danger. But they do seriously have to think about it, right? Because this team now, Gizmo's gone, and they looked the best pretty much at the start of the year, and since then it's fallen off pretty drastically for them. In fairness, they almost looked the best when Paul X was in their team very briefly, which probably makes sense actually now looking back at what the New York Subliners have done this past weekends. But with Gizmo back in Europe for kind of mental health reasons effectively, or maybe there was some sort of family problems that he's gone back to deal with and stuff like that, Harry stepped in. They probably feel like Harry's more comfortable in the main AR role, and therefore maybe Zero, instead of playing a flex, wants to play a full-time SMG. Maybe this could work. Zero, very flexible player, he can certainly, I think, make it work. Whether it's going to quite give them the aggression they're going to need to have, it does make me wonder, because Zero at the start of this game, when London was the best, or one of the best teams in the world, he was like a top 3 AR, and now he's going to a full-time SMG. So if this works out, I kind of be surprised if it works out to the point of making the team better than it used to be. I'm somewhat concerned about the future of this team right now, though, especially because the start of the year looks so promising. They might well be on track to go out with a whimper effectively this season, but as Zero says, ran an AR and got bored of gunning your favourite players. Now I'm coming for Simp with the Gun. We'll certainly talk about Simp here in the Atlanta FaZe guys in just a second. The OpTic guys, of course, they're flying back out to Dallas from the Columbus event, I guess, that they were just in. And despite a reasonable top 4 placing this past weekend, of course, Illy wasn't in the team for most of the weekend. General came in. They still managed to take down Atlanta FaZe, even with the substitutes. So it seems like whatever the situation, they always seem to beat FaZe. Illy kind of says this. Just I looked at this tweet last night, right, and kind of thinking, okay, is he coming back? Is he not coming back? Sender actually says this, right? The Undertaker makes a return. So we'd imagine Sender probably knows a bit more than we do, maybe implying that yes, indeed, Illy is making this, the return to the starting team. But as I said yesterday, in order to make the return, you've got to be playing a lot of Call of Duty, which means you've pretty much got to be 100% fit and your thumbs ready to go and all this type of stuff. So hopefully the antibiotics, whatever he's been taking, has been working out very nicely controversially indeed. And, with any luck, Illy will be back in business for this team. But again, with or without Illy, they still find a way to take down Atlanta FaZe. This is what the guys on the reverse sweep had to say on it last night. I thought some interesting discussions in here, really. Well, first of all, right, look, the mental block, and Nabel believes they had one. He said it a while ago, actually. So does Parasite, that, okay, whenever they play OpTic, they just can't get over the line. A team like FaZe, they come through the groups, they pretty much demolish Toronto, a pretty good team at that event. They demolish Seattle Surge 3-1. They take down StrikeX without too much issue. They come out their group with no problems at all, straight into the bracket. And, very first round, they play OpTic. They practically 100-point club them with a substitute the first map, and of course, exactly what OpTic did when, Simp wasn't in their team in the kind of final match of, or one of the final games of the Stage 2 qualifiers, Major 2 qualifiers, when they had Prestinni instead of Simp, and OpTic came out and 3-0'd them. I think everyone was expecting pretty much a very similar thing after that game 1. But Enable reckons that given those circumstances, the only way they possibly lose that series is if they have some sort of mental block against these players. And Parasite reckons it actually might be a Shotzzy and Illy thing, based on the fact that FaZe also back in the Modern Warfare days couldn't get past Dallas Empire, or always kind of second fiddle, lost a load of grand finals that year. Might well be a very similar story repeating itself here. The other side of things is the fact that Cellium has been their dominant force so far this season, but according to Enable, he's actually the only player on that FaZe team that enjoys playing this game. The rest of them don't have a good time at all, which might well contribute to their rather lackluster statistical performances.
FaZe struggling a little bit. Haggy, I know you said you think that they have a mental block against OpTic.
Yeah,
obviously they're struggling against that team specifically. I don't know if any of you have any short thoughts about that.
I've seen it before. It was just opposite, Pat. You remember back in AW?
OpTic had a little mental against Mr. E and Y.
It was a big mental block. I'll be willing to say it, but I think Atlanta FaZe does. Like, they should have won that series versus OpTic. I thought that once Illy was subbed out in this tournament, that this was Atlanta FaZe's tournament, and they went through pools, easy peasy. They looked great. They even started the first map in that OpTic series, and I was like, okay, this is over. 3-0, 3-1 max. And they still somehow lost. Like, no disrespect to OpTic, because even though Illy wasn't playing, they still have Shotzzy, they still have Scump, they still have Dashy. And no disrespect to General, because he's good as well, but they got to win that series 10 out of 10 times.
100%.
Like, there's just no way that they don't win that series unless they have some sort of mental block. And I don't know if they're going to be able to win an event this year, because they might run into OpTic. Until they can get a win over OpTic, they're chalk. They're compromised, in my opinion.
Yeah, you know what's funny about this is this literally looks like the same season as the MW season, where FaZe was always just number 2. It didn't matter how good they looked versus everybody else. They played against Shotzzy, they played against Illy, on the Dallas Empire roster, and they couldn't beat those guys no matter what the hell they did. They've been struggling this year. They're not the same FaZe that they were in Cold War. I think they're a level lower than they used to be, and you see it when they play teams like OpTic. I think they have a mental block. I know for a fact a couple of the players hate the game, because I talked to them on a personal level. I can't say who, but they are struggling this year, and I know for a fact, not only are they're 0-4 versus OpTic, by the way. They cannot beat those guys. They definitely got some sort of a mental, but they are unhappy as with this game. So there's just so many layers as to why this team
I heard Cellium's the only one who enjoys it. That's what I heard.
Probably.
So this, of course, was that match where it was the Tuscan hardpoint where there really was the dagger here. In fairness, FaZe could easily have won this series 3-1 if that Tuscan hardpoint goes differently, but they made some mistakes. Scump caught through the back, OpTic clutched up in the end, and won both search and destroys in this series to manage to take it down. So very impressive work, of course, by the OpTic guys, but I think, as I said at the time, it maybe even says more about FaZe than it does about OpTic, having the fact that, given OpTic a substitute, and the way the groups went to this tournament, and the other side of the bracket ended up being New York getting through, and New York and Thieves, Toronto Ultra, these type of guys that end up getting through the bracket. This should have been FaZe's tournament to win, right? With OpTic kind of obviously having a sub, FaZe should have been number 1 favourites for this tourney. But once again, they fall short. This time they don't even make the grand finals, they go out top 8, which does make you think, as there's been 4 events so far this season, none of which have been won by FaZe. It's if you can consider the kickoff or not, whatever, but there's only 3 more events, right? There's Major 3, Major 4, and the World Championship. Even if they win all of those, you got to think about this old dynasty talk that came up last year, and most people, I think, said, okay, FaZe were phenomenal last year, they dominated everything, but in order to be considered a dynasty, at least this is my my view, they're going to have to do it again in another title, or at least win a good few events in another title next year to kind of cement their team in that kind of dynasty era, effectively. And that's certainly not been the case so far. So, like, maybe the dynasty talk effectively is at an end here. But this point about the players not enjoying the game I thought was really interesting, because we talked about this from the start, that it seemed like aBeZy wasn't really having the greatest time. Like, well, Arcitys even tweets this out in February, right, just to, obviously, like, tongue-in-cheek, right, and Simp doesn't seem to enjoy it as well. And Abel reckons that Cell is the only guy who actually enjoys playing this game. The other guys are having a torrid time. And in fairness, you look at aBeZy's stats right now, like, if you want to rank aBeZy in terms of the best player list, where does he go? Like, you know, he might be top 10, top 15, like, I don't know, maybe he's top 10 or something, but he's certainly not top 5, which is pretty absurd, that Simp is maybe up there in top 5 there or thereabouts, but aBeZy and Simp, like, the last couple of years have been, you know, both of those players have been in the top 3, right, pretty much, and this year it's certainly not the case at all. FaZe's season record still looks kind of nice. They've got a lot of victories here, but you think about last season, they lost like 7 series all season, and this is since kind of the start of Major 1 through to today. They've lost plenty of series. They've lost, what, well, 6 series as it is here, and 4 of those are to OpTic, right? Every single series they've lost to OpTic, apart from, well, this was our models a 3-0 when they had the sub in, but they've lost 2 Game 5s. They lost one, of course, they lost this on the Berlin Search and Destroy, of course, that they lost this past series on as well this last weekend. This is, of course, Major 1 to win the entire tournament, but again, so far this season they've played OpTic 4 times, lost every single time. And if we look at the stats here, this is the entire season stats. They look like this. So aBeZy only with a 0.96 in hardpoint. Like, honestly, Cellium's stats are absurd, but you got to think, like, Cell apparently is the only guy who enjoys this game on this team, and he has a 1.3 in hardpoint the entire season, 1.27 in search, and a 1.15 in control. But, like, you look at Arcitys, for example, in the search and the hardpoint, or in the control, sorry, he's got a 0.93. Of course, like, KD isn't everything, but, like, you know, Arcitys, Simp, and aBeZy really have probably been struggling compared to the levels that we normally expect them to be at. Despite the fact that they've still won a lot of series, they're still a very scary team you don't want to play. Like, FaZe have certainly been a shadow of their former self. And, like, you know, is this a Modern Warfare engine type thing? Is it that whenever they play Shotzzy, and, you know, Illy, of course, not this weekend, but Shotzzy, of course, on that Modern Warfare engine, just like back in Modern Warfare when they had a similar team without Arcitys, though, and it was 5v5, MajorManiak was there, Priestahh was there if you guys are new, like, they really couldn't beat Dallas Empire, or they really struggled once they got to pretty much any grand finals they played. Might be a similar thing this time around, but not just against the OpTic guys, but just in general with this team is that, well, not where it used to be. So it does raise the question, like, this team's gone 4 events now, you can consider the kickoff or not, doesn't really matter. They haven't won a single one of them. They have made 2 grand finals, but that's the thing, if they can't beat OpTic and they just have a mental block or whatever it is up against OpTic, then it's going to be a hard time winning these tournaments, right? You're going to have to hope that someone else knocks OpTic out before, like, FaZe end up playing them in a particular situation. And that is also the question, what does it take for this team to, you know, chalk it up and blow it up effectively, right? Look, I don't think it's going to happen this season. It might happen next season, who knows? But that's the thing. If this team goes this entire year without winning an event, which on current form doesn't look incredibly likely to happen, they're probably going to make another grand final or 2, but, like, whether they can win it, like, they're certainly still going to prove that to the rest of the community, to be perfectly honest, based on the way things have gone so far. And if they don't win anything this year, I don't think they'll blow it up, but, like, if the story continues next year, it can't be all that long after the success this team has had. Just to mention this actually as well, from Shotzzy, he's been nominated for the Esports Awards Player of the Month for that 3-piece on Barcade Search and Destroy. Pretty disgusting. Well, like, honestly, as soon as I think a lot of people saw this, they thought, yeah, this play might well kind of go down in history as one of the most ridiculous plays that Shotzzy's made in his career. Like, you know, it's just so well done. The fact that he lets this guy live for a second, takes him down, gets the second, and I think is it Drazah or Octane comes flying out the top and he takes him down as well. Just some interesting plays, no doubt, on that front. Just wanted to talk about this also, actually, viewership for the Pro-Am Classic. I do wonder if they've got some of these mixed up, actually, just because I can't imagine that Toronto versus New York was actually 53k in the semi-finals. Like, obviously, New York putting in the viewership, so fair play, but, like, you know, surely this is swapped, because from my perspective, I'm pretty sure it was the OpTic series versus Los Angeles Thieves that was the one that maybe got above 50k or there or thereabouts. Like, and also the fact that the grand finals isn't here. Like, the grand finals was at least, I saw the grand finals at least like 31, 32k, so that would be at least here on this top 5. But again, no doubt the viewership this weekend was pretty poor compared to what we've seen the rest of the season. Like, at these numbers, as Chrome points out, the Kickoff Classic averaged like 50k, Major 1 averaged like 70k. Of course, peak viewership is here as well. This event fell off pretty drastically, and really there's no surprise after just wasting an entire month of absolutely nothing going on. So hopefully the CDL learn from that one in future seasons. But very much enjoyed your thoughts and all this stuff in the comment section below. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did enjoy it, hit on a like button, tells the YouTube gods this is a good video, I just like you should see it as well, and I've grown the competitive Call of Duty community. Thank you as always, take care of yourselves, and I will see you next time.